Good morning. It is Tuesday. This is take number 2 for me on this video. I talked way too long on the first one. So I want you to turn to James chapter 4 and look at verse 13. We're going to read verses 13, 14, and 15. I'll tell you why in just a moment. But let me remind you, number one, that we have prayer meeting tomorrow night on Facebook Live at 6 o'clock. And folks, we need to pray. Things are getting worse around us, and we need the Lord's influence, and we need the Lord's direction, and we need to pray. I hope you won't skip out on that. I hope you'll get on Facebook Live and join your church to pray tomorrow. There will be some, but we need more. Secondly, let me remind you of what we need to be doing still. If you go out, make sure you wash your hands, make sure you wear a mask, and then make sure that you stay as distant, 6 feet away as possible from people. I've been out already this morning, and some folks aren't observing that. So you can only be responsible for you. And so you try to help yourself and then help those around you by following the guidelines, and let's try to prevent the spread of this virus if we can. All right, James chapter 4, verse 13. Follow along with me. Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go into such and such a town and spend a year there and trade and make a profit. But then verse 14, our focus. Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? For you are a mist that appears for a little time and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. Yesterday afternoon, I was studying for my sermon for Sunday, deep into it. And I was also texting with a pastor friend of mine, and we were talking about different issues and different challenges that we face, and talking about how we need to be praying for each other and all those things. And right as I was talking to him and still working on my sermon study, I got this little blurb across my iPad. Charlie Daniels passed away at the age of 83. He died from a hemorrhagic stroke. And that stopped me in my tracks. And here's why. Charlie Daniels had a life transformation. If you've never read his autobiography, I would encourage you to read it. It's a great book. It's very patriotic, but it's also very Christ-centered. And I think I got it to read it when I was at the library one day downtown. I checked it out and read it, and it was a great book. I don't think we have a copy of it in our church library, but if you can get a hold of a copy of it, you need to read it. He had a change of heart, I believe, in the 80s. He grew up in the church. He grew up poor, like many entertainers did. And he realized that somewhere in there in the 80s that he had kind of just drifted away from his roots. And Jesus had got his attention, and he had come back home to Jesus. He said he never really lost his salvation, because you can't lose your salvation according to the Bible. But he had just drifted away. And he came back to that point where he was saved, and he started to change. He would go so far as to change the lyrics of some of his previous songs that didn't honor God. Imagine that. There's a couple of songs, Uneasy Rider, that I can think of. Uneasy Rider, which was one of his first hits that made it nationally, and then The Devil Went Down to Georgia. There are some lyrics there that he changed to reflect that his heart was on God. And then I started following him on Twitter, and he would tweet stuff every day. He stood for Jesus, and he stood for what was right. He stood for the Bible. He stood for freedom. He supported our country and our military and our law enforcement people. And two things that he tweeted every single day that I was on Twitter. Number one, he says, don't forget Benghazi, because there was 4 of our people killed there when there shouldn't have been. They were not sent help, but anyway, that's another story. But he said, don't forget Benghazi. And then the second one was that he would quote this every day. 22 veterans on average die every day from suicide. And he was very concerned about our veterans. He was very concerned about being an example to them and thanking them. And he valued his life. He valued life in general. He wanted to make it better. And that was one of the points of his book. He wanted to make it better so that when he faced Jesus, like he did yesterday, he left this world a better place than when he came into it. And that's got me to thinking yesterday afternoon, yesterday evening. What about me? What about you that are still here? What are we doing to make a difference? What are we doing to show people Jesus? What are we doing to stand for the things that are right, to stand for the Bible? Because you see, when Charlie Daniels entered eternity yesterday, the only thing that mattered was that he knew Jesus. But a lot of people live their lives not adhering to these words that James, the brother of Jesus, wrote, inspired by the Holy Spirit. We are just a mist that appears for a little time and then it vanishes. Instead, we ought to say, as he says, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. If the Lord wills today, then I'm going to get some things done, and I'm going to live for him, and I'm going to be the pastor, and I'm going to do what I do today. But there's a solid chance, 100% chance that God may take me out of this world today. So what's going to be left behind whenever that happens to me? What's going to be left behind when it happens to you? What are people going to think and say about your legacy? I want you to think about that today. I still am. I know all of us who know Jesus can do better. That's obvious. We're human and we're fallible. But let's strive to make this world a better place than when we came into it. God bless y'all today, and Lord willing, I will see you tomorrow. Hope you have a good day.